Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Episode 11 of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam. I want to jump back into my interview with a therapist who was kind enough to give me not just an hour or more of her time for this conversation, but for her insight during private conversations as well. We left off with me asking her about the potential impact on Rachel's daughters, how they get help, and how they may feel the repercussions of her lies down the road.
The child of the narcissist will typically be split. So if there's multiple children, there could be a lot of splitting. The golden child is the child who the other children might blame for getting more attention. The scapegoated child will be the child all the other kids, also scapegoat to gain mom's favor and attention, or dad, but in this case, mom. And it's a splitting of the kids. They want to maintain control and power over their children's lives, even when they're older. I gave birth to you. You owe me this. Mm-hmm. And, children of narcissists could become narcissists, or they could be empaths. And empaths tend to oblige a narcissist. And other narcissistic children, if that's identified early on, if that trait, sometimes you get that gene, sometimes you don't. We never know the cards we're going to be dealt in life, right? You could have a family of alcoholics. There's 5 alcoholics in the family, and the 6th kid, or one of the kids in the mix, is not an alcoholic, and people think, where did you come from, right? It's the genetic cards we're dealt. You just don't know who's going to get the genes, who's going to get the traits, who's not. So there could be a narcissistic child in the mix. And parents of a narcissistic child should know that the one thing that's really important raising these kids is that you have very strict boundaries for them, and don't let them get that narcissistic supply. It's going to be really important for them to keep good boundaries around these kids and raise them with an education about what narcissism is. The only things narcissists respond to is not wanting that negative reinforcement. So it would be very important for raising a child who you think has narcissistic traits to get educated and get that child treated.
What surprised you, if anything, about my story when you heard it, when you listened to the podcast? Were there elements of it that caught your attention, anything over anything else at all?
Well, I think that one of the traits of the narcissist is that we tend to think sometimes a narcissist can be ragey and explosive. And, there are men that are narcissists and they have the description of being nice and mean. Then women are more the good and ugly. And the ugly can be a woe-is-me perspective, poor me. So, the traits of the narcissist with the issues that were presented in this story tend to be more of that, not the ragey, angry narcissist. The power and control is more around the woe-is-me in the story, and very communal. So communal narcissists have this vibe of, look how good I am. I'm doing so much for humanity, and but they're still very overtly narcissistic, where they're very grandiose in their behaviors and stories. And so I thought that it was good that, again, you as a man telling this story provides a different image of what a narcissist is.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people do think that the narcissist that doesn't have the power and control and loses power and control all of a sudden, will rage and get angry and violent, and they can. But in this case, it's a very different narcissistic presentation of these behaviors.
I hear more from women because women, 80% of true crime podcast listeners are women. So I will often hear about the male narcissist. I don't hear much about the female, but she is, you use this term in one of our previous discussions, that she kind of hides in her own shadow.
Yeah.
Which was interesting.
Well, I got that term from a book called People of the Lie. I was telling you about that book from Scott Peck.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting book that examines the concept of evil. And the narcissist has these traits of, not only are they not going to let you see that dark shadow side of themselves, but they're not going to see that dark shadow side of themselves either. They're not going to acknowledge it. They're not going to see it. So they're not only hiding it from you, but they don't see it in themselves.
It's very interesting to me, and I wonder. I mean, no one has the answer to this, but I often wonder: does she believe these lies that she's crafted? I mean, as recently, listen, she got caught. We're doing this in March of 2025. This probably won't air until May or something. But she got caught, 15 months ago, and just last week or the week before, her boyfriend Russ and she are telling people that she's, flying the helicopter again, and she's unavailable at night, which means, if she's hiding on Russ, just like she did with me, saying, I'm going to Santa Barbara with her family to do this overnight nursing, that means she's at it again. And she's, after I've had 250,000 people listen to the podcast, 500,000 people watch my videos on social media, yet she still has the the Boston way is she's still got the fucking balls to do this. She's got to believe these lies.
When the narcissist can't control you, they control what people think about you. Guilt, remorse, accountability is intolerable for them. And that's why they don't do it. Control and appearances are the blood of the narcissist. So to show guilt, remorse would be something that is just intolerable to the system.
Yeah.
They will not do it.
You got to wonder, as part of the healing journey for a narcissist, if they ever get help. I mean, you said they generally don't come in to get treated. They have to bottom out. Is it like alcoholism or, an addiction to an opioid or anything?
Yes, addictive disorders, alcoholism, drugs of choice are chemically imbalanced, right? Not chemically imbalanced, sorry. Drugs and alcohol are chemically related addiction, where the narcissist, it is that fueled by that power, control, and attention and that kind of thing. But they have a lot of similarities. So that rush of power and control is their drug of choice, DOC, as they say in AA. It is the rush of power and control, where for addictive disorders, it's whatever chemical they're ingesting, alcohol or whatever drug it is. But it'd be great if there were 12 steps for the narcissist, and that's why AA is a resource for narcissists. Reading the big book is a resource for the narcissist, because it starts with admitting we have a problem. And that's the hardest thing for the system of a narcissist to do. But that whole deterring from negative consequences is holding your feet to the fire that, hey, this is a big problem. This is your behavior. This is what you're doing. It could be done in such a way that a narcissist could back up their narcissistic behaviors. So remember, I told you the continuum going down the line. If somebody was a malignant narcissist and they sought help, they could maybe back up those traits. They could maybe get to having narcissistic traits and not being as dangerous of people, being more self-aware, being held more accountable, which is the whole crux of AA, is self-accountability. And well, many more things into AA, but all of those things would be very helpful for someone who is a narcissist. And they do come to therapy sometimes under threat of divorce, losing kids, court issues, but it's not necessarily genuine. It might be a little bit more disingenuous and for secondary gain purposes, not necessarily for true healing. But hopefully there are some people that actually will engage in a therapeutic process and get the help that they need, especially as we are concerned about the whole person who, the narcissist, the kids, everybody involved in that narcissistic. It can only help everybody if a narcissist would choose, if they get to that fork in the road, to get help. How much can you double down?
I look at myself in this and I go, I continue to kind of go back to how did you fall for it? And I think back to when I asked her to be with me, when I refer to it in the first season a lot as, that day we picked each other, but it was really me saying to her, listen, I want to be a couple. I'm ready to do this. I remember, reaching my hands out across the bar and having her not hold hands, but literally putting her hands on my forearm and us holding each other. I've never, had a grasp like that outside of karate class, certainly not over a beer and pizza. But I felt like, the day that I picked her was...
Well, hang on now. Let's back that up a little.
Okay.
I'm familiar with the story. I listened to the podcast. And was there not a time where you were told that I got to let you go, I need to get into a relationship, and if I stay in this relationship, I know it's just you want only friends with benefits, and I want more, and in order to get more, I need to let you go?
What are you saying here? Am I... That's what happened. I said I wanted to see her. I said, come to Billy Bush's party, be my guest. And then she wrote the message and said, I can't see you like we've been seeing each other. And then that led me to, well, what if I want to see you in a real relationship? What if I want us to be a couple?
The difference is one is single and available, and one is married and not available. And so what do you feel happened there?
I think I probably got led into that trap in a way.
It's
set
the
up.
game. The
Yeah.
narcissist will set up the game,
Yeah.
set up the target, and begin. Let's let the games begin, right?
This was supposed to be an interview, not a therapy session in public for thousands of people to hear. But you're right. I mean, I got sucked into that. Like, I bought the bullshit. Like, hey, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. But she was never available. She agreed to be a couple. She took the engagement ring, made up the pregnancy lie, all that other crap. It was all just part of the whole, this giant trap for me, which I took hook, line, and sinker.
Again, there's no responsibility in that for you.
For me?
No, never. It's the narcissist. It's their game, and you're not meant to win this game. And they can change the game at any time.
Yeah.
So to understand, once you understand, you're not meant to win this game. Do you see what I'm saying? You just were never going to win this game. It's an unwinnable game.
Yeah, you don't. It's like watching Netflix and getting to the credits of Netflix. Like that doesn't exist, right? You don't get to watch everything on Netflix. I don't care how bored and lonely and whatever. Like you don't ever get. It never gets to a point where it says you've watched everything, you've done it, you've completed it, you're the winner. No one wins that game with her. You're right. It's true. In the first episode of this season, the second season, I say in Rachel's game, no one ever wins. No one ever wins. Hearing you say that and realizing what happened. That message was sent to me on October 7th, and the meeting in Santa Barbara was the 4th of November, I believe, when I said, let's be together. That was the day I got trapped.
Well, you were in an all-in situation, but
Yeah.
you didn't know what the situation was authentically, and so how could you?
You can go back to that line you said at the beginning. You
You
didn't
didn't know anything until you knew everything.
Uh-huh. I want to go back to alcohol for a minute, because I don't really drink a lot. You know, a couple times a year I'll have a drink. And I had a friend from back home. He said, I'm coming to town, Wednesday night, a couple weeks ago. And he said, make sure you get set up with an Uber because I'm getting you drunk. And I thought, oh shit, here we go. I don't normally do that. And what happened to me that night really surprised me, because as soon as I started to, I had a couple drinks and he started to ask me some questions. And as soon as I started to talk to him about it, I got really emotional. And I thought, where is this coming from? I thought I was healed. I thought it was over. And I have a couple of drinks and now I'm a fucking mess. Like, what is this? What is this? The Rachel Cancer Scam is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to chat with you about something that doesn't get talked about enough. Men's mental health. Guys, we're facing incredible pressure every day. Pressure to perform at work, provide for our families, and somehow keep it all together without showing any cracks. The reality is that 6 million men in the U.S. struggle with depression every year, and most of it goes undiagnosed because we're taught that asking for help isn't what real men do. And I can tell you firsthand, real strength has come to me through recognizing that I needed help and doing something about it. Take care of your mental health. It's not weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. As a matter of fact, it's one of the strongest things that you can do for yourself and everyone who depends on you in your life. And after what I went through with Rachel, I sought the help that I needed. I got someone to talk to, and I got that help. Therapy has helped millions of people learn better coping strategies, set healthier boundaries, and become the best version of themselves. And you don't need to wait for a crisis. Therapy is for anyone who wants to improve their mental well-being. BetterHelp makes getting that help and support easier than ever. With over 35,000 licensed therapists, they're the world's largest online therapy platform. They've helped over 5 million people globally. And their 4.9 rating out of 5 on the App Store of over 1.7 million reviews, that speaks for itself. As the world's largest online therapy provider, BetterHelp can help you provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/RCS. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/RCS.
That, Harry, is trauma. And trauma stays stored in the memory network of your brain, encoded on those neurotransmitters exactly the way they went in. So they're not going anywhere until you heal it. So you can contain it, which you have done, but alcohol leaving you more vulnerable because your judgment is impaired and all the other things that go along with, ingesting alcohol had you in a more vulnerable spot. But you can container those things and you can put them aside and do this podcast and maintain, but it's a trauma. And the trauma is encoded in the memory network on the neurotransmitters of your brain, exactly the way it went in, and it's not going anywhere until you heal it. So that's why it's important to take care of yourself while you're doing this and not put yourself in those situations.
So we go back to the Harry therapy session for a minute.
Harry therapy, yes.
Harry therapy. So
Harry therapy.
Does this indicate to you that maybe I'm not completely healed from what I think I'm healed from? That I had that sort of a response?
Well, it may be an indicator for certain that you're not. It may be a tell that there's still something left. I think that for the magnitude of people you've spoken to, you have gotten some support and therapy. You have talked to so many people about the narcissist. You have had so much support through your podcast and listeners and people who are, really rallying behind you, which is very validating and nurturing. And, people see you, people get it. And that's refreshing and good for your soul. it doesn't mean that all the parts of the trauma are healed. So there is likely that the blessing in, having those drinks, and thank goodness it was with a friend,
Yeah.
that, you were safe with. It is the tell that maybe, I do have something left on this. A lot of people come into EMDR therapy and say, I've talked about this. I'm good. This doesn't bother me anymore. But then we find out there is a little bit of disturbance. Maybe the therapies they had in the past were helpful, but EMDR is healing. So it literally changes a trauma memory into a normal memory. People report that it feels like history. It's just historical fact. It's fuzzy now. It's not as clear. It doesn't pack that gut punch reaction when I think about it and talk about it. That's the difference. So the fact that you had that response under the influence of alcohol may be a tell. There's a little more left to do.
Yeah. There's this weird triangulation thing that happened after Rachel was caught, where she was working Mark, going to marriage counseling. She was still talking to Russ. She had told me, I'm going to counseling for myself. I'm not going to marriage counseling. I'm not interested in that with Mark. She said, oh, Russ is blocked. It was just a friendship. It was this, it was that. And with me, she's saying, really, Mark kept me prisoner. Part of my story about being stuck and not able to get out was not me stuck in the hospital, but me stuck in this relationship. And I was still out for blood with Mark in a way. Even after I talked to him, I was still angry with him because I thought what she was saying was true, and shame on me for that. But I bought into that for a minute. It's amazing to me that she continued to just, I guess triangulate is the right way to put it, but work both of us, or all three of us, really.
Well, remember, when they can't control you, they control what people think about you. So as the hand gets tipped and people start to see the narcissist behaviors, then they have to go ahead and change the story, change the narrative, or change what people think about you. So it's really just a mere bob and weave.
Yeah.
Response.
When the podcast had come out, I released just 4 episodes in the spring a year ago for a small group of people. I was just kind of testing it out to see what people would think, and I put it on SoundCloud, and I gave it to a handful of people, and it was up. There were people in San Luis Obispo that were hearing it, and it was a big deal. I used her last name. I used everyone's name. Like, I blew everyone the fuck up. And she was saying to people, I was hearing from people at work with her at the airport saying that she never had a relationship with you. She doesn't know who you are. You're being paid by Mark. She doesn't, you know what I mean? It was all that stuff. And that infuriated me. Like, what? I have her initials tattooed on my chest. Like, I got every fake cancer picture, every, fake ultrasound. I got the receipts, as they would say. But that infuriated me that she said, I have no idea who this man is. He's being paid by my husband to do this.
What else would a person that's a narcissist do? A person with a narcissist is not going to tolerate being wrong, tolerate being remorseful, tolerate. Their system won't tolerate it. They just cannot tolerate. And it's such a hard thing for us to understand because we don't think like that.
It's so interesting to me. I mean, as a guy who thinks he's changed as a man, and I certainly, as a result of the relationship with Rachel, I've talked about this, the silver lining, but I think I'm a much more compassionate man, and that certainly listens and admits when there's a problem and when he's wrong. But the concept of not being able to admit when you make a mistake.
And it's hardwired. It is hardwired. And that's the thing that is very difficult to understand. It is hardwired. Their system won't tolerate it. Yeah.
I'm in a relationship now. I've been in with someone, for 6 months or something. And that's not without its challenges, certainly, because of what I'm working on day in and day out. But I'm very conscious of identifying when I've made a mistake or I'm wrong, or trying to look at her side of it, like having to live with this every day. Like, it's all consuming. This
Well,
whole
you can't compare yourself to somebody with a personality disorder.
okay. All right. Yeah, right. There's no comparing that. You quote this Michael J. Fox line that I love often.
Oh, yeah. I saw it on his movie documentary Still, and he was talking about when he was getting ready to do the Family Ties audition that he was down to nothing. He was ready to go home, but he said, I had a chip in a seat. And I love that term. And that's how I think of the narcissist. They always have a chip in a seat. And as long as they have a chip in a seat, they're going to continue marching down the way, collecting their narcissistic supply and doing what they're doing.
When I told Rachel I was going to do the podcast, she said, you don't have a right to tell my story. It's my story. And went into a full-on panic, went to Mark at that point and said, Harry's going to do something bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Harry was just going to tell a story. But her response to me was, you go do whatever you want. I'll just tell people it's a lie and be the liar again if that's what they want to believe. And that's it. And basically screw you.
Woe-is-me. That type of behavior is the narcissist woe-is-me. Remember I told you the good, the ugly piece?
Mm-hmm.
The piece of that woe-is-me, poor me. And that is a narcissistic trait, the woe-is-me.
Listen, we could probably do one of these a week. I imagine I'd be paying you at that point. But I appreciate the time and you not billing me for the hour.
No problem.
And I don't know if I've missed anything. If there's anything you want to touch on in terms of maybe people that have experienced something similar to this. Any closing comments from you?
I just think that anybody who thinks they're involved with a narcissist to really read up on narcissists, become an expert on what is a narcissist. And if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, seek somebody who can help. There's lots of help online even. Dr. Remini is someone my friend Candace recommended, and the Little Buddha, who's somebody my friend Candace recommended to listen to. Reading Butterfly Killer, anything that you can do to become an expert in the narcissist will help, be very helpful. And just for you, Harry, that to not take responsibility for the behaviors of somebody with a personality disorder, you were up against a system you had no chance with. You had no chance. So, you cannot keep comparing yourself, or you cannot compete or take ownership of somebody else's stuff.
And there was no way I was ever going to win it, as you said. That was so beautifully put.
Nobody wins this game.
Right.
So, just take care of yourself and anybody else who's dealing with a narcissist to just become a really good expert on what is a narcissist. And if you need me in the future,
I know where to get you. Right here on Zoom.
whose car are we taking?
You got a little bit of everything there. I was struck by several different things that I think may help others as they navigate similar situations. Hearing her reflection on the absence of remorse, a calculated willingness to use her own kids as pawns in her schemes that point to something far more dangerous than just self-absorption. What also resonated with me was the observation that I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew everything. This is it. It really says everything in one statement. It perfectly captures the experience of being manipulated by Rachel, at least my experience. The pieces didn't come together until the entire picture was revealed. And for me and others that are caught in situations like this one, I guess you don't find out until it's too late. I think that if you're in a relationship like the one that I was in, or if you've had one of these, her advice about looking for the outlier behaviors as warning signs is pretty practical advice in terms of things you may want to remember. For me, so much had to do with the long-distance relationship component of this, which is my piece of this thing. It provided perfect cover for Rachel. Understanding the psychological aspects of what she did and what she continues to do is pretty crucial. I guess not just for making sense of what happened, but for healing and moving forward for me. Her final message, that those dealing with narcissists need to become experts themselves to protect against harm and future harm. It's a pretty valuable takeaway for anyone that's listening to this and recognizes these patterns in their own lives with people. On the next episode of The Messenger, we'll continue piecing together the elaborate deceptions that affected so many lives. And now I'm armed with a little bit of a better understanding of the psychological mechanisms that made it all possible. On the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam.